This is the Killer Innovations Podcast with Phil McKinney. Keep in mind that the information and opinions expressed in this podcast are Phil's, and Phil's alone, and they don't necessarily reflect those of his past, current, or future employers. Now, here's Phil McKinney.
Do you have an innovation culture? Do you truly believe that your culture encourages and supports the innovation activities within your organization? Culture is one of those things that's hard to quantify. It's hard to measure. When I ask executives, when I'm out talking to executives about their organization and how innovative they are, I ask them, do they truly believe that they have an innovation culture? They tend to project their wishes, what they wish their culture was like, rather than the reality. And they will stand there toe-to-toe and argue that they have an innovation culture and it exists today. But culture is based on people. People change. People leave, people come. If you don't stay on top of the culture, it will change. It will morph. And there's lots of reasons why those changes happen. So is there a way to get a more unbiased view of what your culture is today and to determine, is it really an innovation culture? Yes. I'm going to walk you through a series of questions that I use when I'm out working with organizations who are trying to achieve a high-performing, innovative culture. Now, these questions are really an assessment of an existing organization to get you that unbiased view. In next week's podcast, I'll go through more detail about how do you then target what that innovation culture really should be. So this week, it's about an assessment. Do you have a really honest view of what your culture is today? And next week, we'll talk about what is an innovation culture and how do you start to look at transforming what you have today into that innovation culture. So question number one, what do you believe is the essence of what your organization stands for? Now, I'll go into a company and I'll interview 10, 15, 20 people. Now, what I'm really looking for is not so much what the answer is, but do I get a common view? If I ask 15 people, do they all believe they understand what the essence of the organization is? Why does it exist? If not, that automatically raises a flag in my mind because then that means people are applying their own personal view. Leadership has not stepped in and defined what the essence of the organization is, such that people can then check themselves. Do I believe in that? Do I support it? Do I see the role that I'm providing being aligned with that? What is that essence? What is it? Why do you exist? And does everybody in your organization agree as to why you exist? Second question is, how is your organization the same or different from others? Your competitors, maybe geography, other companies in your country or region. This question really is focused along, how are you different? Are you different enough such that people can understand what makes you unique? Or are you just generic like everybody else? Generic is a problem because therefore the employees don't know what you stand for. If you stand for what everybody else stands for, then there's no way for them to really grasp on and really understand their role and how they can help drive success within the organization. So how is your organization the same or different from others? The third question, for people who are successful in your organization, what are the common traits? This is one of the key questions. For people who are successful in your organization, what are the common traits? This is where you have to face yourself in the mirror. If you look at everybody who's been promoted, got a title, got promoted from a standpoint of span of responsibility, moving into management, or maybe got a more senior engineering title, somebody who got a financial reward, somebody who got recognized at a meeting or got sent off on one of the senior executive trips. Look at what those characteristics and traits are. And be honest. Don't cherry pick people whose characteristics and traits align with what you wish your vision was. Look at everybody who's been promoted. Now, I went into one organization not too long ago, not something based here in the U.S., somebody based outside the U.S., and you looked at those organizations. When I asked the senior leaders, when I asked the CEO to run through this exercise, they came back and they had to honestly face up to the fact that in some cases, the people who had been, quote, successful in their organizations were those people who played the corporate politics the best. So what happens? Everybody starts playing the corporate politics because people aren't stupid. They see what the characteristics are for the people who get promoted. And for the people who get promoted, in this case, people who played the corporate politics games really, really well, that meant if you wanted to be successful, you have to learn how to play the corporate politics. And that became the core of their culture. If you were to be successful and you were to be part of this organization, you had to play the corporate politics game better than anybody else. In this case, the CEO sat down, realized the mistake, and began transforming his culture. He looked at getting rid of those people who had a characteristic that they didn't want, and identifying and rewarding those people who were exhibiting the characteristics that they wanted. Now, the flip side to this question is, what are the characteristics of people who failed in your organization? People who have left, either they just quit, or they got hired away by somebody else, possibly even people that you fired, or people who are actually in your organization but who just aren't successful. What are those characteristics? Now, in that case, you're also trying to be honest. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. Are you ignoring those people who actually have the characteristics that you want in your culture, but because of some other thing that's holding you back, these people aren't being successful? This is an opportunity to look at both of these questions. Look at the people who are successful, look at the people who failed in your organization, and understand what are those characteristics. Again, don't cherry pick. Look at everybody who's left your organization. Look at everybody who's been fired. Look at everybody who has been left because they got hired away. And don't think that just because you do an exit interview, you've satisfied this requirement. People who leave and who go through an exit interview tend to be very nice. They don't want to burn the bridge. They never know. They might actually come back to that organization at some point, or they might need a reference. So you don't get a true, unbiased, unvarnished opinion when in an exit interview. You need to step back. You need to go back and look at performance reviews. Talk to the people who worked with them. Try to understand those characteristics of the people who failed within your organization. And what does that say about your culture? Fifth question. Who are the 5 most respected people in your organization? Not what senior management views, but within the organization. Who are the go-to people in your organization, and what are their characteristics? Why are they successful? How did they get identified? Are they all in leadership? What is it? Because what you want is not just 5, but you want 10, you want 50. You want 50 of those kinds of people. You want those people that are highly respected in your organization. They are obviously exhibiting some form of a culture that attracts other people to them. People respect them. They go to them for their answers. It could be teamwork. It could be their willingness to drop what they're working on in order to help somebody else with their project. What is it? What is it about that characteristic, about these 5 people, that really make them highly successful? And then last, the question is what are the characteristics of the missed opportunities and failures of the organization? Did you miss something that your competitors picked up on and now you find yourself behind? Those are missed opportunities. Failures, projects that started that just totally did not work out. Is there a common set of characteristics? What's the process that each of those projects went through? Missed opportunities. Is it a case where senior management would not approve the early work on it and waited too long before starting the work, and therefore you missed out on a complete opportunity? Or is it a case where projects have failed because they weren't really a selected project, they were a pet project of a senior executive, which means there was really no effort to validate that this was the right project to work on. It's just because somebody had it as their pet project, everybody was off working on it. And yet, when the project was done and delivered, it totally failed because it really wasn't something the market needed or that really advanced your business. It was simply done as a science experiment for some executive. So what are the characteristics of those missed opportunities and failures in your organization? So if you go back and you ask yourself all 6 of these questions and be brutally honest, look at yourself, look at the people, look at your organization, and look at the failed missed opportunities and those failures within those programs. Look at it all. Lay it out. Write it up on a whiteboard. Truly try to understand, reverse out, what does this say about your organization, about your culture? What are the characteristics that make it up? So now step back and try to derive what is your culture, but also identify what is not your culture. If your culture is people who've been successful are good team players, very supportive, willing to help out, reach across the silos, and be highly successful, that is a great culture. If your culture is people get promoted because of self-promotion, it's all about them, not the teamwork, then that's a different kind of culture. Now, that may be okay for you. It may not be okay for you. In the case of innovation, teamwork is critical. So go through all 6 of these questions and go about quantifying what does it say about your culture. This is your assessment. And list out what does the 6 questions answer, but more importantly, what would you now describe as your culture based on the answers to these questions? And go through each one of those items, and those that you don't like, flip it and write out what you wish your culture was. This is going from what is your culture now to what you wish your culture is. And that becomes now a target list of the things that you need to work on within your organization. Now, as I said, in next week's podcast, we're going to talk about what are the characteristics of a highly innovative culture. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're in technology or, hospitality or restaurant. The characteristics of an innovation culture is generic to the industry you operate in. And that's what we'll talk about next week. So the homework assignment before the next podcast is for you to go through and do this honest assessment. Truly understand what it is about your organization that defines who you are today, what constitutes success, what constitutes failure, and the characteristics of your people, and what has been your history of being successful or not successful in opportunities and projects. So again, that's your homework assignment before the next podcast. With that, thank you for listening to this week's podcast. If you have feedback, comments, questions, or suggestions for future shows, send them to me at feedback@philmckinney.com. The podcast is getting back onto a regular schedule, so feel free to subscribe. You can subscribe in iTunes or any of the other podcast sites that are out there. You can also find the direct feed for the podcast so you get it right away over on the main page at philmckinney.com. If you're interested in more information about how to be more innovative or how to help your organization be more creative and more innovative, pick up the book Beyond the Obvious. It's available in all the bookstores. It's available for digital download. It's also now available as an audiobook. And with that, I thank you for your time out of your busy schedule. I look forward to hearing your feedback. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.